The Miami Grand Prix is a pretty rubbish race. We all know it, and it's ironic that the race with some of the most razzmatazz on show is a Grand Prix with some of the worst on-track action. Now, as F1 fans, we want all races to be exciting. Miami looks like it's here to stay, and that raises a much larger problem for F1 that has a very easy solution. But there are also a few easy fixes that F1 could make to the Miami track itself. So we're going to discuss the wider issue F1 has that Miami spotlights, and then we're going to make 3 changes to the circuit which will completely transform the racing there. Now, addressing that major issue with F1 that Miami highlights, which is ruining the F1 calendar, if we think bigger picture, we've seen firsthand over the last decade that F1 is really trying to establish itself in the US and has done a lot of different things off track to appeal to the US audience. But the main reason we watch F1 is not for the off track, unless you're attending in person, in which case it's a nice to have. Qiddiya, Madrid, Osaka, Chicago are just a few tracks being considered to join the calendar. Now, it's inconceivable to have a 30 race calendar, so if these new tracks did join, it would be at the expense of other races and potentially some of the best. F1 needs to make sure that they don't just shoehorn a track into locations just for the sake of money. Miami is the worst example of this, and we as the fans should really be able to influence where we race. But F1 has already invested in Miami, so let's make the best of a bad situation and fix the track. Now, I've identified 3 corners that are problematic, and based off my recent video on what makes a track good for racing in F1, there are 3 features a track has to have to create good racing for F1 cars, and we're going to use them to fix this awful racetrack. Now, the first feature a track has to have is best shown by Alonso's defense masterclass in Brazil last year. Let's take a look.
Okay, it's 0.5, use energy, 0.5. 2 more laps at the end of this one too.
Forces a defensive move, that's not what Perez needs. If he goes off the racing line, he could be vulnerable to 4. Number 4, this is going to be super aggressive between the two of them. Alonso's fought his way back through.
Now, what made this race so exciting? Well, it was each driver's ability to take different lines in the final corner, depending on if they were trying to attack or defend. So we're looking to change Miami's turns 1 through 3 complex because it's a really tricky area for the cars at slow speed. Now, my inspiration for this was Abu Dhabi's turn 9, Qatar turn 1 and Monza turn 11. That wide, flowing, parabolic sort of corner. It's going to look a little something like this. It's going to be a longer radius corner, less heavy braking, but hopefully it's a little bit wider as well around the apex. That is so bad. That is so bad. But you get the idea on what I'm trying to do here. And get rid of all of this rubbish. We don't need none of that. So that would be the new turn 1. Obviously, if we could add a little bit of banking to the corner, that would have been amazing. But this track is built on a car park, so we're incredibly limited with what we can and can't do. So that's the first part we're changing. On to the next corner. Now, a second feature that a track needs to promote wheel-to-wheel racing is best shown by Sainz and Leclerc when they gave every Ferrari fan a heart attack at Monza in 2023.
They are fighting hard once again. This is gloves off stuff. They're side by side at Monza, but he's locked up to give another opportunity to Sainz, who cranks on the steering wheel. Oh, they nearly made contact again.
Now, what feature made this racing great? Well, it was the high-speed straights going into slow chicanes. So heavy braking zones are the key feature we need to add. Now, the Miami circuit has a lot of medium-speed corners in the first and second sectors, but then all of the slow-speed ones seem to come all at once in the third sector, and that is just absolutely awful. It's a terrible sequence, especially that clumsy little chicane. It's just dumb. It makes no sense. Why is it there? They're too heavy to go through a corner like that, let alone try and race that. It's just... Please, delete it. So again, I had a look on the map, and where the track is all built in a car park, the circuit could accommodate a change here. Now, we come out of turn 8 and then through turns 9 and 10, which technically are corners even though they're flat. But then instead of going through that weird stadium style section, we're going to do a Monza turn 1-2 style chicane, but instead of being right-left, we're going to flip it, do left-right. From that chicane, it's another dash to the 90-degree left, before the long straight. Now, I have checked, and as we can see on the iPad, there is a lot of space around here, and we could take some of that space and make the track wider because it's too narrow there. I mean, it's not rocket science. Who am I, right? I just make videos on the internet, and I can see that there is room here to widen the track. And if we want racing, we need a wider track. Now again, my thinking was to promote racing, right? That's fundamentally what I'm prioritizing here. And if someone's just been overtaken in that Monza style chicane, well then they can then come back on the long straight leading into turn 17. Now there's a final feature that we need to add to Miami to make it good for racing, and if you've ever done F1 open lobbies, you'll know what I'm getting at. But let's take a look at the opening lap of Max Verstappen's onboard from the 2022 Belgian Grand Prix.
Max Verstappen starts 14th. He's got on the podium 3 times from 16th or lower. See what he can do from 14th today.
Now through the Les Combes and Malmedy section, the track isn't super wide, but it's wide enough for cars to go side by side, and we've seen loads of action there, loads of moves on the first lap, even though they're 90-degree corners. So the feature we need to bring to the Miami circuit are those fast flowing corners, and to be honest, I actually think that Miami is fairly okay at this. You know, Sector 1 is pretty good. We've just taken out turns 1 through 3, which are the worst part of Sector 1. Then you go to 7 and 8, which again is a cool corner to go through. It's long, it's medium speed. Leclerc had 2 spins there, or I think he had a crash in qualifying, didn't he, in 2022? My only issue with these corners is that they aren't quite wide enough to promote overtaking and side-by-side racing. Now you're obviously limited by the stadium and the facilities, but what I wanted to do was just widen the track from the entry of turn 4 through to turn 8. So the way we could do that is by delaying turn 4 ever so slightly, and then from there you just feed back into the ever so slightly narrower turns 7 and 8, but still keeping it a lot wider than it was before. And again, just like in Spa, it doesn't have to be crazy wide, it just has to be wide enough. And at the moment, Miami isn't wide enough to go side by side in those fast corners. And this is really an easy fix. Okay, it costs money, but long term, if the track's going to be on the calendar for the next 50, 60 years, it's not going to make too much of a difference. So it could happen and it would make the racing better. Now, those are the 3 changes that I would make personally. But what would you change? Is there something different about the track that you really don't like? Let me know. Now, those updates could make the circuit better in theory, as they open up more on-track variables and allow drivers to take different lines. But all of this is useless if the sport can't create closer racing and championship battles. Ironically, the grid is tighter than ever, yet we still don't have a championship battle. And this is a really big problem for F1. It really isn't living up to the level it should be at the moment, but WEC is. It's actually building itself up to be better than F1 in every area. So, if you want to find out how WEC is creating real problems for F1, you can watch this video here. In the meantime, subscribe so you never miss out on F1 content.